Today's guest is Yembeh Moiba. Here's our job talk with the tax manager.
Welcome to the Job Talk podcast, where we talk with people who love their jobs. Our guests open up about their challenges, surprises, and secrets to success in their industries. Through conversation, we explore their careers, past work experiences, and the education that got them to where they are now.
I am a 46-year-old man, and I still experience anxiety that I have a grade 12 math test coming up that I'm not prepared for or probably won't put the work into it. Whatever math dyslexia is, I have it. It's not diagnosed, but I have it. So my high school experience, which has been well documented on this podcast, I didn't put a lot of effort into it. What was your experience like in high school?
Oh, okay. That takes me back to Winnipeg. My high school, I think, based on the people I was hanging out with, I think we weren't very keen on the school part of high school. I find, now that I look back on it, I find that, most of my days in high school was probably spent not in the classroom, which hopefully my mom doesn't watch this and see this. But I was an average student. I did enough to make sure that I could get into university, right? And but by no means was I at the library late trying to get things done. I mean, I think I finished with a 70-something average, so I was an average high school student that spent a lot more time not in the classroom. So I spent time playing tackle football outside at lunchtime, or going over to my friend's house who was close to high school. So I think that pretty much sums up my high schooling days.
That takes us to your first post-secondary experience. Where did you go and what did you take?
So my first post-secondary experience was at the University of Manitoba. When I graduated high school in 2008, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with school. The only thing I knew was I wanted to play football. But obviously my mom was not going to let that slide, so she made me enroll at the University of Manitoba. I was at the University of Manitoba for about a month, and then I realized that, the U of M is not for me. So that was initially my first post-secondary experience. It was the University of Manitoba.
And then you moved to another post-secondary?
That's right. And then I moved over to Alberta. Like I said, all I was trying to do at that point was play football, right? So when U of A came calling, they offered me a spot in a scholarship to come to the U of A. I was like, well, I want to play football, but that means I have to go to school. So then that's when I moved over to Alberta and I went to University of Alberta, yes.
And the program that you went into at the University of Alberta was a Bachelor of...
So the way it works, I knew at that point that I wanted to get into business. But if I remember correctly, I couldn't get straight into business. I had to take some prereqs. So you could do that in any faculty, I believe. You could be in open studies, in arts, sciences. So I had to take the psych, sociology, calculus, and a few English courses in order to get into business school. So in my first year at the University of Alberta, I took those courses to be able to get into business school.
What's it like playing sport at a high level? So you're at the University of Alberta. What is the league that you play in when you're at the University of Alberta? Is that
it used to be called CIS, but now it's called U Sport. It's called U Sport now. So that's the college level or university level in Canada. Yeah.
And that's a high level of football for our listeners that don't know that. And what position did you play?
I was a receiver.
You were a receiver. And did you guys have success while you were playing football at the University of Alberta?
Unfortunately not in my first couple of years. I came in 2011, and my first 2 years we did not win a single game. We were 0-16 in 2 years. So it was tough. But then after that, in my third and fourth year, we had a tiny bit of success.
Well, it's character building, the way I look at it. You
100%.
learn more about yourself through losses than you do through wins, I believe it. And I've lost a ton through life, but I'm a better person for it. What is it like being a university student with your studies and also playing the high-level football?
It was busy, and to add on top of that, I also competed in track for the university, right? So on top of playing football, I was also on the track team. So I mean, a typical, let's say, in the fall semester, so September to December, that's when football is going on. I would have classes, from 8 till 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then from 2:30 to say 4:30. I would stay at school, get my assignments done. I had to be at practice for around 5 o'clock until about 9 p.m. every night.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a typical fall semester for us. And then on the weekend, we're playing games either here in Edmonton or we're going away to UBC, U of M, U of R, and we're traveling. So it was a pretty tight timeline for us in the fall.
And were you at the University of Alberta for 4 years, or did you take a little more time? 4 years.
I was there for 4 years, yes.
And okay, you graduate from the University of Alberta with what degree?
A Bachelor of a BCom.
A BCom. Okay. Did you know that you always wanted to go into accounting?
No, I did not. Here's what I knew. This takes me back, back to when I first moved to Canada. When my family moved here, English was, second language to me, right? So I was doing everything to avoid not taking any English classes, right? My dad was an engineer, so from a young age, I think he never would admit to this, but I think he tried to sway me and my sister to go into engineering, but for some reason I did not want to do that. So I knew I did not want to go into engineering. I knew I didn't want to write any long essays or anything that had to do with English. So to be honest, business school was kind of a default for me, right? And when I got into business school, I took accounting courses, I took the finance courses. Accounting was the one that made the most sense to me. It came natural. I did well in them. So that's kind of how the journey into accounting started for me.
I asked you to be a guest on this podcast because when I asked you about your job, you showed so much energy and enthusiasm and positivity about being an accountant. And I have some preconceived notions about accountants, so I thought you just work with numbers and and that's it. And you don't have any human connection, but you did talk about your clients. So this is what's fascinating, and I love the fact that you came on this to talk about it. So in order to become an accountant, it's a CSA, is that your designation?
A CPA.
A CPA. Okay, yes. And you have to write a test to become a CPA.
That's
could you talk about how do you prepare to write? Is it called a CPA test?
It's called the CFE. It's a common final exam, but it's a CPA exam. Yeah. And
are you only allowed to write that test twice? I
believe so. Yes, I believe. Okay, so I believe you get 2 cracks at it, or it might be 3. I'm not certain, but you only get 2 or maximum 3 tries at it.
Okay, that's a lot of pressure.
Yes,
the first question is what advice can you give to somebody before they write the test? How can you get prepared for it?
Well, so here's how the program works. The program can be a 2 to 3 year program. When you first start, there are 6 parts. Okay, so every 3 months you are in part 1. So you do part 1, and then you have a final exam for that part. Okay, so you do this 5 times. After you pass all of those, and then you become eligible to write the final exam.
Okay.
Right. So in terms of how you prepare for the final exam at the end, hopefully throughout the first 2 years of doing those the smaller exams, you would have picked up some tips on how to get yourself prepared, and so you can carry all that into prepping for that final exam. But in terms of how to prepare for that final exam itself, most people take about 2 months off of work. All right, I had to take about 7 weeks off of work, and you are basically studying from 9 to 4 Monday to Friday for about 2 months.
Wow.
And that is not me exaggerating or anything. That's I mean, if you want to pass, I mean, there's some people that can maybe do it in a month, but I certainly took about 7 weeks to get ready for it. So yeah, you get to the library or you get to school from 9. I did 9 to about 3:30 Monday to Friday, and then on the weekends I would do my weekend things and then get back there Monday, do it for 5 more days until it was time to write the exam. And the exam itself is a 12-hour exam.
It's a 12-hour exam.
It's 12 hours.
Yeah.
And it's split into 3 days. So the first day is I believe a 3-hour, and then the next day is about 4 hours, and then the last day is 3 hours or something like that, or something like that. Yeah.
And what are some of the topics that are covered on the exam?
Well, I mean, obviously there's the personal taxes, right? They may give you a case. They're case-based exams, so they'll give you a 40-page case of a person who's married, they have kids, a normal person, and they give you all their tax histories, and now you have to file their taxes and make any kind of recommendations, right? So that could be a case, or it could be a situation of a company who's trying to expand into the US. Say, so you have to do some research and you have to determine what kind of tax implications this may have, what kind of international tax reporting they may have. So I mean, it could be anything, or it could be something like an audit, right? So where they give you a company and you look at their processes and you have to give them some recommendations on how to improve their internal processes, right? So the range of things they can test you in is very broad. So you just have to be prepared and hope that what they test you on is something you like and is something you can answer.
This is all through the University of Alberta still?
No, so after you graduate with your BCom, you have to go work at a CPA firm. So you have to go get it. It's called it's the same thing lawyers do when they graduate. You have to go article. So while you're articling at a CPA firm, that's when you do those 6 little exams, and then at the end you write the common exam. So this was post-university now. So the CPA is run by the CPA Institution of Canada.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so you've finished that course, you graduate.
Yes. Yeah.
What is your first position? And I guess how long did you stay in that first position?
So after I graduated university, I went and took an entry-level job at a local firm here. So you're basically a staff accountant, right? So normally these firms will hire about 5 to 10 people who are just graduating from university. So you start with 7 to 10 people, and you guys are all in the CPA program, and you call a staff accountant, right? And then by the time you finish the CPA program, so either in year 3 or year 2 or year 3, you become a senior accountant, right? Yes. And then when you pass the common final exam, and you have earned all your hours, because there's an hours component as well. You have to, it's basically a work experience you have to have. Yep. Once you meet all those things, then you become a CPA. Then you can use the CPA designation.
Okay, let's talk about your position today.
Okay.
And the position that you're in today, you're called a tax manager. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And how many years have you been in your role as a tax manager?
So this will be my first year. So I I graduated university. Well, I got into accounting in 2016, right? So
Right.
from 2016 to about now, so what is that? 6 years, almost 6 years for me. This September will be 6 years for me from when I got into the accounting world. So no, I mean normally that's between 4 to 6 years, you go through all those levels and then you become a manager.
Okay. Can you take us through a day-to-day in your job from when you wake up in the morning and when you finish your day?
It depends on the time of the year. So let me take, I'll say in April, right? That's our crazy time of the year, right? For all accountants. So in April, I'll probably get up at 6 a.m. I would, if I have to go to the gym, I'm at the office for 8 a.m. And get to the office, have coffee, probably check a few emails. And then because it's April, I'm most likely working on personal taxes, right? So that could be, a situation where you have the one that comes to mind from this tax season, it was that person who was, they spend half their time here in Canada, spend half the time in the US, so you have to deal with all those tax obligations in both countries and things like that. So a typical day in April for me is pretty much that, get up, gym, work, do some personal taxes, come home, or go coach football.
Yeah, and we're going to get into what you like to do when you're not working. What do you love about your job?
I love everything about my job. Obviously, there's some things that I may not love, but I love everything about it. And specifically, I think we'll probably get into this, but the notion that people have of accountants that we just sit in the back of the room and we just type and we do numbers, right? But to be honest, that's not how the accounting world. I mean, there's still, if you're that type of person and you still want to do that, there's a place for you, right? But in most firms and with most accountants now, you have to be able to take that hard number stuff, right? And you have to be able to convey that to a person who may not have that tax knowledge or accounting knowledge like you have because they didn't go to school for it. So the best part of my job is being able to take the hard numbers and all the tax act and tell it to a client and say, okay, this is what all that means, and this is what you have to do. And the relief that you see on their face, to me, that's still the best part of my job.
Love it. What are some of the glaring challenges in your job?
There are a few. I think one is, this is no knock on the CRA and or anything like that, but a part of my job sometimes is to basically act on the client's behalf with the CRA, right? So let's say a client, is the CRA has sent a client a letter and they have to provide a bunch of things to the client. The client will engage us and we will act on behalf of the client. Most times that process can be dragged out, right? And it could be up to a couple years to respond back, to hear back from the CRA and things like that. And it's not all their fault, especially in the last couple years with COVID and all that, if people are working from work. But sometimes that can be, the part about my job I don't love is that wait, to hear back from the CRA and go back to the client. And most times the client don't understand that. They think it's us not doing the work, but we do the work as soon as we can, send it off to the CRA, but unfortunately they don't always get back to us as soon as possible, right? For many, many reasons, not to just believe everything on the CRA here.
Yeah. Has there been any surprises that stand out to you of being a tax manager?
So that tax manager role is brand new, so I've actually not, so I guess I'll talk about, any surprises in accounting in general. I think the very first thing that surprised me was how little you make based on how much hours you work earlier on, right? Yeah. So that definitely surprised me. I thought, I was like, hey, accountant, I want to be rich in 5 years. But it's certainly not how it is. You have to pay your dues. You have to, put in the hours, get your CPA, and grind. So that certainly surprised me in my first few years. Yeah.
Did your dad come to terms that you didn't go into engineering, do you think?
On paper, Yes, right. I can still remember us having conversations, and I feel like this may be just a me thing, but I feel like engineers. Well, my dad, my dad felt that engineers were the cream of the crop. Like he thought it was the best thing you can do. So sometimes when I'll be having conversations with him, I don't want to say he will look down on accountants, but in his head he probably thought I could have done better or something like that. But there's always that back and forth with him. I was like, hey, well, if you look at all the big companies in the world, I was like, who is the boss of your company? It's probably somebody with a numbers background, a finance or accounting. So technically, we are the bosses of you guys. So, so I always have that back and forth with him.
Do you do your dad's taxes?
No, I never got a chance to do my dad's taxes. No, I did not. Not because he didn't trust me or anything, but he didn't live in Canada here with us. So
okay.
he had, he worked for the UN for many years, so they took care of all that for him. So I didn't get a chance to do his taxes.
Okay, that's fascinating though.
Yeah.
What advice could you give to a university student that has graduated that is considering becoming an accountant? Why would you recommend accounting to someone?
Well, the biggest one is flexibility and job security. To me, I didn't even know this back then, right? But now that I'm in it, just think about it. No matter in what the situation is in a business, it doesn't matter if they're making money, losing money, their accounting has to get done, right? So that the job security in accounting is amazing, right? Once you get your dezegation, you're probably not going to have work. So that's one. And the second thing is flexibility, especially with the CPA designation. I'm somebody who, although I haven't done it yet, but I would like to travel someday and go live in a different country. And with the CPA designation, I could go to places like the US, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and it would be a fairly smooth, a smooth thing for me to get a job in those places with my designation. So I think those two things are probably the biggest attraction into getting into the CPA program.
What are some misconceptions, and you may have covered it a little bit, but what are some misconceptions out there about accountants? And I probably had it when I was talking to you about becoming a guest on the show. I wasn't trying to be insulting to you in any way. What are some misconceptions that you would like to help people understand about being an accountant?
Sure, I think I will touch on two. I think the one I kind of briefly touched on it earlier is that accounting, the CPA program or an accountant now, you don't you don't have to be somebody who is for instance, that introvert who just sits there and does numbers, right? There's room for people with outgoing personalities. So that's one. And then the second thing is you don't have to be genius at math. I think that's kind of the other one. Is like, you have to be brilliant at calculus, this and that. Yes, you may have to take a calculus course to get into business school, but once you become an accountant, a CPA, I've never had to use calculus in accounting, right? In tax, I've never had to find the limit of something or that kind of thing, right? So that is a total myth. You don't have to be great at math. You may have to take math to get into the program, but tax. Specifically tax, because that's the area I work in. It's all laws, right? Because you get a tax act that's written by lawyers. You just have to be able to take that act and make it make sense to a client, right? So I think those two things are probably the biggest misconceptions about account, is that you have to be great at math, and the second one is that you cannot be somebody who's an extrovert who likes meeting people and doing those things.
Excellent. When you're not at work, what do you love to do?
When I'm not at work, I love to cook. Cooking is my passion. If I could cook for a living, I think that is the only other thing I would leave my tax for and go do. It would be cooking. And apart from that, sports is my passion as well. I grew up in sport, and now I'm coaching on my free time. And I didn't think I can't believe I'm saying this, but I probably enjoyed that more than I enjoyed playing. Right, and I've only been coaching for just over a year now. So when not at work, you can find me in the kitchen or coaching and doing things like that.
What is your signature dish, do you think? What do you make best?
What do I make best? So here I have two things I make really good. I think that people have told me that I make really well. One, I make really good meatballs, like a pasta meatball. I think, even just talking about it right now, I think I may have to make it this week because I'm craving it right now. And then my second thing is my potato salad. I'm a big fan of potato salads, and I've been told I can make a pretty good potato salad.
That's the culinary side of things. What is the biggest reward you're finding with being a youth coach for football?
Oh my goodness! It's all amazing, but I think the biggest reward. I didn't think of that one. I think the biggest reward is, say take last year for instance. The way my season started, things didn't go great. We lost a few games. The kids were down, but then we stuck with it. And towards the end of the season, things turned around. Won a few games, made it to the playoffs. But all that being said, I think the biggest reward was seeing kids that have never played football before, because probably 70% of the kids last year, it was their first year playing tackle football. So seeing from when we started in June, July to when the season ended around Halloween there in November, the progressions these kids had made, right? And some kids didn't even know the different spots they could play on the field in day one, to now where I can have football conversations with them. I was like, hey, you're playing back, or you're the will linebacker, or you're safety. So I think for me, that's been the biggest reward, is just teaching these kids the fundamentals of football at a very young age, which I think is very important, because that will build a base. And so if a kid, after doing that, if they end up loving football, at least now they have some fundamentals they can build off of going into Bantam, high school, or even the university level.
Well, your positive energy for your career and your job, and your positive energy towards being a youth coach is inspiring.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for joining us on this podcast today. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Job Talk podcast. For more information, please visit us at thejobtalk.com.